Hey, hey.
We finally get to do this. I, it took me a second to arrange everything, so I'm glad we're here. How are you doing?
Great. Really grateful to be here.
I'm very grateful that you are here. And we have amazing presence of amazing people. So I'm very happy that we have this audience. So let's start with just a little bit of an introduction of who you are, just to kind of like kick us off so people kind of know who you are and what you do. And then we can dive into more interesting things.
Sounds good. So my name is Juliana Garces, and I'm on a mission to help raise the collective consciousness. And the main way that I do that is through art. I create visionary artworks to express mystical experiences that I've experienced so that other people that have had them also can reconnect with them, and the people that haven't ever had them maybe begin to feel into them. But recently I've been expanding through starting to do poetry to express these mystical experiences, and also videos, and just now I'm really starting to understand that it's in whatever way I can raise the consciousness, then that's what I'm here to do.
Actually, I didn't know that you also started diving into poetry.
Yes. So I create a poem now for each artwork that I make.
Oh, really?
So because I used to say that I wasn't very into words and that I was just all visual. That was kind of like an identity I was holding on to, a younger version of me. But after a while, I was like, you know what? I can do poetry. I can do words. I can be a good writer. Like, I need to let go of that identity, that label I'm putting on myself. And I started to create a poem for each artwork. And I think it just helped me expand to the people that are more logical, there's some people that are very visual, and then some people that they need the words. And I wanted everybody to be able to have that effect of having their consciousness raised. So I was like trying to figure out how can I do that more, and I figured, hey, if I create a poem, then the people that need the words to really feel it, then they can feel it more deeply. And it's been a really good response. Now there's some people that tell me they like my poetry even more than the artwork. So
does it hurt your ego that they say that?
No, I mean I create both of them, so I'm
That's
like, whatever works, you know.
That's an interesting distinction, actually, because Terence McKenna had this whole thing where he was talking about the difference between the people who look at the world and people who read, which is a similar distinction you're making. I never thought about that in depth, but I think it's a real one. I guess in the like conceptual granularity, maybe.
Yeah.
Like it's just like letting something just hit you as what it is versus the specifics of. But I guess poems can also be pretty out there and pretty esoteric and pretty mysterious,
For sure.
just as like as paintings are, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to figure out if I'm trying to express a certain vision, a certain message, like how can I expand it to be able to be understood by as many people as possible. And adding that poem will help some people be able to look into it much deeper than, even though there's a crowd that, you know, they say like the picture's worth 1,000 words and that's all they need, and then there's a crowd that like loves the poem, and like then they can look back at the artwork and like really see it so much deeper. So just trying to, you know, create all these different ways. And now I'm starting to expand on doing videos talking about the artwork, so I can, you know, have the visual, have the like read the poem, explain it further in a video, then maybe people can feel my feelings and like what I was trying to express, and just create as many ways of through art, through all these various forms of art. Now it started with just visual, but now all these other forms to raise the consciousness as much as I can, which is my whole mission. And you know, I know there's a lot of other people also on this mission to raise the consciousness or help the world or whatever way they want to put it. But I just want to do my part, whatever I can in this lifetime, to just even just do a little bit of
Move the
that.
dial a little bit.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It's well, first of all, let me give some specifics to people. So you create what I guess people will call psychedelic art,
Yes.
right? Which is influenced by, and the motifs in it also are from DMT space, psychedelic
Yes.
spaces. Did you ever try to do different kind of art before then, or in the middle?
Yes.
Or okay.
Yes, so I started off by doing a lot of realism, which was just, I used to do a lot of portraits in pencil, just realism. it was almost like a curse because it was, I guess I was too good because I started showing in galleries and people would come up to me and be like, "You're a good photographer."
Oh wow!
I'm like, oh
so
no.
you like create like those ultra realistic ones?
Yeah, and I'd be like, oh no, it's not a photo.
Wow.
Yeah, and it led me to this was in Orlando, and it led me to having some Disney Imagineers and Disney become really interested in me. So it did lead to that. They saw my realism, they thought it was really good, and I ended up being trained in Disney, which taught me a lot more about how to express ideas and imagination and just further expand my art skills. Eventually I left Disney and I focused on my visionary art. I wanted to, follow my passion, which was doing my visionary art, expressing these mystical experiences that are through psychedelics, but sometimes they're also through lucid dreams and meditation and hypnosis. So many ways. I feel like when we open the doors to becoming a visionary, they start coming through in more and more ways. We just are telling the universe that we are an open door for receiving cosmic visions, that cosmic creativity. And it largely did start through psychedelics, but now I'll be doing dishes and I'll start getting really intense visions. Not like hallucinations, but just like in my mind's eye.
Dangerous when you're washing the knives.
No. In my mind's eye, I'll start seeing these glorious like spiritual visions that I'm like, wow, like I need to express that. I need to create, something to express that. So
that's interesting. That actually sheds a lot of light on what you do for me because I told you this before. You probably one of the, if not my favorite psychedelic artists.
Thank you.
And I always mean when I say that. It's amazing. I always say, and it's not to put down anything that Alex Gray, for example, does, but he's kind of like as a very known entity in that space. And I always found his work to be a little bit lacking in the, I don't know what to call that, maybe the principle. It's almost like the feel of what he's putting out there. Maybe the drawings are kind of similar, but it was always lacking some kind of an element that I couldn't point to. And I feel like you're actually putting it in there. And I guess you told me that it's maybe because you do more mixed media, right? It's kind of like...
Yeah, I'm not sure. Actually,
it looks a little bit more, I guess, digital, which, for example, DMT spaces actually look more digital.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so I do mixed media where I layer digital and acrylic paint in multiple layers, like a sandwich effect that I created to create this like fusion of digital art and traditional art, which for me encompasses and parallels the ideas that I'm trying to express also, because I'm trying to express these very ancient, sometimes like philosophical, spiritual concepts. Like right now I'm doing a lot.
So it's not just, sorry I'm cutting you off, so it's not just visions that you see, it's also sometimes like motifs and things like...
Well, a lot of the visions that I see go back to a lot of like yogic and Buddhist and Hindu, Vedic, things. So it all kind of interconnects, but it's bringing in that like ancient spirituality and creating it in a modern way. And in the medium also, it's this very ancient, painting, the ancient technique of painting with the traditional art, with the digital. So it's old and new. Just like the concepts, old and new, and then the medium, old and new, mixed in a new way.
So you used to animate for Disney, you said?
No, I trained to be a Disney Imagineer. So they're the ones that, they're a mixture of like the imagination and engineers. So they come up with
Imagineers.
Imagineers, that's where the word comes from. So they imagine and engineer the theme parks and a lot of like the things that are built in Disney.
Oh, wow.
So they kind of sit down and like come up with the ideas of like, oh, this part of the park would be cool and let's dream about it. And then they're like, okay, and then let's like figure out how we're going to build it and the mechanics.
So it's like brainstorm galore. It's like, just like you learn how to brainstorm on a whole other level.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a lot of like imagining beautiful things, but also kind of like, all right, let's get serious on how we're gonna like bring it to the physical. And that's the biggest thing it taught me, was like how to like deeply imagine and deeply be able to bring that back to the physical, which I do that with my visionary art. So I'm very grateful for my time in Disney and for my mentor, Timmy Britt. I really appreciate everything he taught me. Still one of my best friends. So
Shout out to Timmy Britt.
yeah, shout out to
Well,
Timmy Britt.
yeah, I think you nailed it on the head. One of the most challenging things I feel like in that art in the psychedelic space is the translation of those multifaceted, multidimensional objects that, like, for all intents and purposes, there's really like what we can draw in 2D. It has to be just some kind of an analog. Like, it can't be the full thing, but somehow you bring it to life in a way that is very convincing, and that's the thing that I find the most valuable in it for me personally. I don't, different people probably find different things, and that's actually a question for me that always arises with artists. And whenever I talk to artists, they have different answers to that. You and I had like a little bit of that conversation just when we were going to an event. We were like in the car, and I told you that I personally think that art has this objective parameter in which there are certain things, like if I would have to, define an artist, the way that I view it is that a good artist is someone who can take an emotional imprint or a state that they're in and then create something, and it can be anything. It can be a poem, it can be a painting, it can be a piece of music that contains it in a way, it's almost like a capsule. And then a good artist would encapsulate it in such a way that somebody else sees it and they feel something very similar, if not almost the same kind of imprint or emotion. Now, some artists really doesn't like that definition. I understand. It's that they want it to be completely open-ended, and they resist, any idea of their work even having any objective component at all. And I completely understand, and who am I to say, because they're the artist, right? But just like I'm looking from the outside, and what you said in the beginning of the conversation, which is that now you're incorporating also poems that maybe give another angle at the same piece. It's almost like you're trying to make it, would you say, maybe accurate is the wrong word, but more precise to what you want it to be? Or do you also fall in that category of just you want it to be completely open-ended?
So I think both are valuable, but I'm definitely more on the side of trying to express something specific. And that's ideally artworks of higher realms, of just very high frequencies, like those experiences, and trying to put them into, physical artworks and then poems, and just encapsulate, the divine, remembrance of the divine as best as I can. But I also am aware that as soon as I create anything, there is some degree of it taking a life of its own, and people interpreting it in different ways. So there's been so many artworks that I've created that, and I'm trying my best to express something specific, but then people go and see it in a whole new way. And I appreciate that also, because sometimes it's very beautiful and it's something more personal to them, like a personal psychedelic experience they had, or a personal moment, or they see something in it that I didn't draw, focus on drawing, but they see it in it, that kind of thing. And that's, I also appreciate that.
Yeah. No, but it's the healthiest way to go about it. I feel like you allow the piece to. It's almost like a kid. You want it to be a certain way, yes, but you also need to understand. Yeah, you gotta let them go.
Exactly, and you try your best to give them positive things and lead them in positive directions. But then they're also gonna be their own thing. So I actually created an artwork about that topic specifically a long time ago. And
which topic?
About how when you create something, it takes a life of its own. Oh, a life of its own. Yeah.
So can you want to talk about it?
Yeah. It was. This was a very long time ago. It was maybe 6 years ago or something. It was this oil painting. That was this giraffe, and this girl was on painting this giraffe, the spots on the giraffe. Mm-hmm. And from there, the spots would fly off and turn into birds. I don't know. It's it's hard to.
I don't know. I see the piece. I see in my mind's eye. I understand the concept.
Yeah, so it's she's trying to paint the spots on it and trying to
the
make
spots become something else.
Yeah, and then they're just turning into birds.
Yeah, they just turn into whatever.
Yeah, so it's a very surrealist piece. Yeah.
So this is something that I didn't necessarily understand about your work, which is it's very specific in that you want to express the divine and the higher realms. So this, would you say that kind of takes precedent over just needing to express yourself?
Yes. So I mean, there's a lot of things that, feelings that come up and that, I want to express or something like that. But I really just try to focus like on my main mission, because like I understand that I'm only here on this earth for a certain amount of time, and like, I don't want to like spend time every time I get like angry or sad just making artwork to just express how I feel. I try to focus on that bigger picture of like, what can I create to help, raise the consciousness.
What are you contributing to others?
Yeah, exactly. So I see the value, and definitely there's some artists that really enjoy doing that, and like they feel sad or nostalgic and they want to create an artwork to express that. Great. But I'm like, for me, it's like my mission, it's very clear. I know it every moment, and that's what I'm here to do. So if anything I want to create doesn't align with that, I won't put the time into it.
But would you still create out of sadness or melancholy or something like that? Or you try not to go with any negative emotions?
No.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know that everything I creates like a big ripple and is affecting.
You don't want to amplify that.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to amplify it. So I'll definitely, I won't like neglect it. I'll like feel it and address it within myself. But everything I want to put out there for other people to see, I want it to be something positive.
Wow, that's it's almost like you're taking a lot of responsibility there. That's commendable.
Thanks.
So you started painting how many years ago? Like first time you picked up a brush?
I can't even remember. I was such a little kid.
Oh, since you can remember yourself.
Yeah, always been painting and.
Oh, so it wasn't even a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm always maybe not jealous, but like always in awe of people that that have the gift of knowing what it is early. And I guess maybe it's a combination of having it available, but also it not being sequestered and maybe hampered a little bit by parents or by the environment, and just allowing it to actually grow into what it is. And then that, I think that's such a gift to be able to live that kind of life, because a lot of question marks disappear. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of challenges still, but I feel like when there's this middle path, it kind of like everything arranges itself around it, and then it makes the mission a little bit clearer, and also the product a little bit more of a high value. Sure. Yeah, I really love that about people. So it might be a little bit of a slightly of a sharp turn, but I don't want to forget it. So I want you to tell me you still have a lot of energy.
Yeah.
You told me this amazing story about how you influenced your dad to take psychedelics for a particular reason, and it really transformed a big portion of his life. So do you mind telling us that story?
Yeah, absolutely. It was very inspiring to see. And so my dad, just to give some context, was a very like straight edge kind of guy, like, maybe drank some champagne on New Year's kind of thing, like didn't really do any no cigarettes, like.
Oh, so he didn't even drink.
He hardly drank. Like, he I wouldn't say he didn't. It'd just be like very special occasion. Like he just didn't do any substances. He was very straight edge for the most part. And yeah, and just like, like suit and tie kind of guy, like salesman, like, and he unfortunately got diabetes and was called me saying that he was starting to go blind from diabetes, and he was starting to lose sensation on his feet and limbs and stuff. So the situation was like pretty bad pretty quick. This kind of came all of a sudden, that he found out he had it and that he was starting to lose his sight, and I knew that I needed to do something like drastic to get him out of that drastically bad situation that was very sudden for all of us. So I went down to Florida, drove, and really told them like, all right, like we gotta do something. We're gonna do some psychedelics. Like, are you open to doing that? Because at this point he knew I was largely a psychedelic artist, and he'd seen like it wasn't anything new. You know, earlier in my life, it seemed like oh, they're drugs and it's bad. But by this happened in January, like this year.
Oh, so it's fairly recent.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It was recent. So by then, he already knew that psychedelics weren't bad, that there's a lot of positive research about them, and that they've created a lot of happiness in my life, and he's seen all the art I create about them. So it set him up for a good context of like, hey, like, you know, he was a little more open to them. And I had asked him a lot of times, like, hey, would you be willing to do mushrooms or DMT? And he'd been like, no, like, if I'm ever dying, I'll hit you up, but I'm good. But this time he was like, all right, like, let's do it. So I started off by giving him some mushrooms. That went well, but then I did a DMT journey with him.
Was it in the same visit? Sorry, I'm cutting you off.
So it was 2 separate visits. The first one, he told me that he wanted to do some mushrooms, and that if he was gonna do it, he wasn't gonna do a small dose. He wanted to do a full dose. So I was like, okay.
I like the commitment.
Yeah, he's like, if I'm gonna do it, because I was like, oh, I'll start you off with like 0.5, you know, a microdose, get the feel. He's like, no. We're gonna do this like fully. So give me a full dose. So I was like, okay, 2 grams is like a full dose.
Decent.
It's
yeah.
decent. It's not huge, but it's not like small for, you know.
You don't want to go
It's a
heroic dose in
yeah,
the beginning.
Yeah, it's a dose. So I set everything up where, you know, put calm music, had like Hertz, you know, binaural beats playing the whole time, and we wrote out the intention before we started, like wrote down what he wanted to get out of the experience, and we blessed the medicine and try to make it as ceremonial as possible. And I told him that really the biggest benefit would be from him laying down and closing his eyes and going inwards. So he lay down in his bed, and I would go check on him every so often to make sure, like, hey, do you need anything? How's it going? Like that kind of thing. But I really wanted it to be more like him going inwards and having his own journey. And it was very positive. He came out like saying like, yeah, like I need to love myself. It's all love, and love is the answer. It's so funny.
Wow.
That's such a classic.
What a win.
Yeah, that's such a classic like answer to psychedelics is like love is the answer. I'm like, exactly. And of course this also came with me doing like some drastic like dietary changes and stuff for him, and you know, having him go for walks and cleaning out his pantry, throwing out all the sugar, and like showing him how to cook some yummy vegan food, that kind of thing. But after that, you know, it's still kind of progressively still getting a little more, you know, he was still sad, like his eyesight was still going away, so I went back and I gave him DMT. Yeah.
Just like that.
Well,
and I gave him DMT.
We also did, we made sure to do a very like ceremonial manner. So, you know, all the first few times I did DMT was through ayahuasca. So that kind of really set me up to appreciating the ceremonial aspect of it. And even though this was just like vaporized DMT, I still wanted to have that kind of very like ceremonial aspect to it. And my dad's Catholic, so I like made him a little altar with all his Catholic stuff and the Bible, and you know, like I try to figure out like what would he resonate with and what's spiritual to him. So I like try to set that up like a little altar next to the bed, and I got some like white roses, and I just try to make it really beautiful, the calm music, setting the intention, like meditating right before, doing a little breath work, like really try to set it up for as positive an experience as possible. And he did great. He said it was like, came out of it, he's like, yeah, like I just need to love myself and, you know, and take care of myself. And like, he was like, you know, I search for all this love outside of myself, and really need to like focus on loving like myself and giving all that love to me. And I thought that was really positive. And like, of course, I'm not saying that the psychedelics were like the only thing, you know, it was part of a big puzzle of like having those lifestyle changes, but I feel like it provided that spiritual motivation for him to actually go through with the lifestyle changes. So it's not like if he had just done that and not changed anything else, it wouldn't have worked. But I really feel like that motivated him to, okay, I'm gonna eat healthy, and I'm gonna exercise and I'm going to do all these things. And he went from very severely diabetic, like losing his eyesight, to a few like months later, he kept up with this really good diet and exercise and positivity. And he went back to his doctor and she said, like, this is a miracle. Like, what did you do? They took him off of a bunch of his medications. Like, now he's considered like hardly pre-diabetic. Like, they did the blood work test and he came out as like hardly pre-diabetic. And now his goal is by the end of this year, hopefully be considered not even pre-diabetic. So
that's incredible.
Yeah, so
that's one of the most like amazingly positive psychedelic stories.
Yeah,
you can put it up there.
I'm so proud of him, and I'm so happy that he's like stuck with it. And I think just going in there and like, you know, seeing that there's a spiritual dimension to everything, just creates like a deeper like motivation and like feeling of belonging and of love and of oneness that really motivates you to, you know, choose eating something healthy instead of going and eating a bunch of junk food and sugar and stuff that is just like a sign of hating yourself. So like, you know, I think it's like creating that like, you know, motivation from the psychedelics. And yeah, it's been really positive. So
I was really blown away by the story, and I think this is like one of those you know, stories that just illustrates what is the actual power of psychedelics, which is that, you know, people have all kinds of experiences. Sometimes they're positive, sometimes they're negative. But even clinical studies show that the moment of change doesn't come from just ingesting it. It's from that transcendent experience that you're describing. Like, if you can have that, there's all of a sudden a different tone and a different flavor to everything, because you realize, oh, even if you were Catholic or Christian or just religious in any other form, there's something about the experience of that dimension that changes everything, because you realize, oh, it wasn't just stories. Even though I'm sure that a lot of people believe in it, but it's very different believing in it and then seeing it, like actually firsthand, to realize that there's this weird portion of the world and the mind that seems to be hovering around us all the time. Like, we're a part of it. And I think that as we're moving forward into this, like, you know, now everything is becoming much more accessible and legal, and all that stuff is becoming, obviously, people are just accepting it way more. I think one of the biggest important things is that the institutions that integrate that into their, you know, either it's a hospital or in hospice or things like that, and I think it's being done, and this is very encouraging. It's very important that we don't lose track that is the mechanism, not the substances themselves. The substances just kind of open the door.
Yes. And I think what these really beautiful mystical experiences, of course, when done correctly with the right, like, you know, set and setting and responsibly and all that, I think what they give people the opportunity is they take them out of this like habit loop that's maybe causing problems, such as, you know, my dad with eating bad and not exercising. That's like a habit loop that he was just so stuck on. Or like, you know, someone with depression or someone with an addiction. It just brings them out and brings them into this like beautiful, like divine, like kind of realm. And then when they go back in, they actually have a moment to like reanalyze, like, will I go back into that habit loop? Oh no, I can change that. So it gives them like an escape for a moment. So may that be like 15 minutes in DMT or a couple hours on mushrooms or whatever. But it breaks them from that like loop for a second, and then they can choose to either do differently or to, of course, continue. Like, there is people that do psychedelics and they just go back to doing the same thing that isn't helping them, and it doesn't work. But it gives people that opportunity to get out of that.
Yeah, in the end of the day, you're still the conductor that decides whether or not you're going to take that lesson on board, or if it's just going to continue. Because really, you're absolutely right. It's the circular thought process that keeps people in this bondage, whether it's addictions to drugs or to foods or to sexual relationships, anything that we can't get out of, as far as like we can't say no to, even if we choose to. In my head, it was always it always compares kind of like to like a clutch in like the old cars. You know, it's almost like it's stuck in those teeth in that wheel. But psychedelics, almost like you press the clutch and it just releases. And even if the thing still has momentum, it's just spinning without you, really. And you can kind of look at it and say, oh, wow, never realized that this thing is not necessarily, doesn't necessarily has to be me.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that really makes people, sometimes people see it in the silly things like, oh, they choose on something. It's like, they're like, wait, who's chewing? Like, they're kind of like, they don't understand, like, it's them chewing, but they're looking at themselves from the outside chewing. And that, I think that's kind of like, that is the beginning of that entire world of understanding that leads us to the deeper path of what life can actually be. Like, I actually know you through your boyfriend Max, which is another incredible human being, and I met him at the Vipassana retreat, and there's something, I came from psychedelics very early on. I started doing acid when I was like 11. I was a crazy kid, and I did a lot of crazy stuff, and then it was never like in any sense of trying to understand the world or trying to understand anything deeper. It was more obviously to escape. But then later, when I got a little older and I started realizing that I can actually use these things, they are the one that opened me up for the possibility that there are mechanisms by which I can actually see things that will allow me to be a better person over time. And then, pick up, again, I'm a perfect example of that. Then you pick up meditation, then you pick up like other tools that are maybe a little bit more structured, because you understand that, just climbing on a rocket ship is not always, can't always be the answer.
Exactly.
Yeah, but anyways, this is something that I think you're absolutely right. That it allows for that mechanism to be broken even for a moment, but the choice is absolutely still yours.
And it's about like implementing like the lessons you learn. So like if you do these medicines, like afterwards, like writing them down, ideally like right away, and like focusing on implementing them. So if the psychedelics tell you like, hey, like you need to stop eating badly, you need to go and walk, like, actually like the next day going through with that and then continuing that.
Yeah, the going through with that, that's a big one.
Yes.
So when was the first age that that you've done psychedelics? Like, when was the first time?
I was 15, 16. I think I was 16. Yeah, I was like.
What was it? Which compound?
It was LSD. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Acid is always the gateway.
Yes. So I was early high school, and by then I had already done a lot of research, because like by age 12 I was lucid dreaming heavily and like exploring realms, and like I knew that there was so much more than just what we see, and I became so curious on like mystical experiences and like looking into how can we alter our consciousness. And I learned about psychedelics, and my brother was doing a lot of psychedelics, my older brother, and so I was like already looking into them, and one night he showed up very randomly, and he had just finished his LSD trip, and he's like, hey Julie, you want a tab? Like, you know what, yeah, because I knew I had already done my research, and like, most 16-year-olds, like I would say, probably don't do it that early, or 11-year-olds.
Don't do it, kid.
Yeah, but I was like, I knew what I was getting into. I was like, yes. Yes. So I took it, and he passed out because he had just finished his like rage of like super long journey. And so I had it was just me. Everybody else was asleep. It was me and my own consciousness, and it was beautiful. Like I felt like the sun was coming out of me, and like I was bursting into light, and I was dancing and meditating, and I ended up like painting trees all over myself, and I could see like my veins were the same like roots of like the forest and everything that makes up everything. Like I just felt so like united to the whole cosmos, to all of existence, and it was just so beautiful. I was in tears, and yeah, and it just really like I had already started my spiritual journey, but that just like made it like so much deeper. I was like, wow, like this is.
Did it immediately change how you draw and paint, or?
No. So the thing was that I was creating a lot of art, and I did like kind of start like really appreciating psychedelic art, but I was really in that time focused on getting my technique down. So I knew that one day I wanted to be able to express some beautiful messages and, the concepts. But at that stage, I knew that what I needed to focus on was purely technical. So that's when I was just like understanding lighting and form and a lot of realism. So I was still heavily in that. It wasn't until some years later that I felt like, okay, I feel really comfortable with where my technique is at, and that I can express whatever comes to mind easily. Like it's I can figure it out. That I started, doing especially a lot of DMT. That I was like, okay, like I need to make art about this specifically. And
Why, by the way, that? Like, what was it about that? Just what you read and saw, and it just did it call you, or it was just available? How
the DMT.
Yeah.
So I had done ayahuasca a few times, but it was kind of just this very particular period in my life where I had just left Disney and moved. I've moved to South Carolina and then North Carolina. But I moved and I went into the forest to I left Disney. I was like, okay, I'm going to do my visionary art. And I didn't really know what that meant exactly. And someone gave me some DMT, and I had done ayahuasca, but I was like, okay, this is my first time doing I was doing changa. So infused leaf DMT. And I did it in my art studio. And I was reading the book, Alex Gray book. What's it called? Art. Forget the name of the book, but I was reading an Alex Gray book about creating visionary art and how that's the one of the greatest forms of expression. And I did this DMT, and I was like, you know what? Why am I still creating this technical art when all I want to do is express these very spiritual concepts? And that's the whole reason I left Disney. But I was still kind of dabbling. I felt like I was almost in this comfort zone of this is what I've done. I want to do that, but I'm still doing this. And there was just that moment where I did the changa that I was like, okay, this is where I need to shift. And largely starting to create my mixed media really helped with that, because the DMT realms, they're very geometric and bright, on a lot of I see them on a lot of black backgrounds with really bright colors on top. And the technique that I developed of this layer of digital and acrylic really, I feel let me do those effects better than just with paint, because of the paint not showing up bright enough for it to represent these realms.
That's what it is. It's the lighting. I'm now realizing. It's the way you use the light and the way it makes it look a little bit, not shiny, but it has this iridescent essence, just like in psychedelic. That I feel that this way a lot of haters are gonna be, but I do feel that Alex Gray is kind of missing that component. It feels much more earthy, which is fine, but I feel like DMT spaces do have this
yeah, there's very I don't know, there's this almost technical side to them. Yeah, and it was because before that I was doing a lot of pencil and a lot of acrylic, but then I started implementing the digital and mixing it, and it just all kind of came together all at the same time, of me doing this very powerful changa experience and reading that book and leaving Disney and starting to add digital, create this new method of creating, and it all kind of just started from there, to me from there forward just creating visionary art. And that was 2018 or 19, something like that.
It's amazing how often DMT is a catalyst to this next level stuff.
Yes.
And for different people in different ways. So I guess asking you whether you think the space is real or not is kind of pointless. I mean, it's obviously you think the space is real.
Yes.
But did you ever, and you might not even be interested in that from that perspective. I guess my mind always kind of leans a little bit more towards kind of the scientific. So for me, it was fascinating in that regard. But did it never, you said that from a young age because you had lucid dreams and you kind of already realized that something else was going on. Maybe because you grew up with it, it was never kind of it was almost well, yeah, for you. That's what I'm hearing. Maybe, you can correct me, of course. But did it never fascinate you? What, the full implications of that? You know what I mean? When it fully dawns on you that this is real, did it have any kind of, I don't know, it feels to me when I realized that, which was way later in life than you, it just, Okay, so let me give you a specific example. So I've done DMT many, many times, and yes, it feels realistic and all of that stuff. But one time when I started having those like ultra realistic experiences, all of a sudden, it like I was convinced. I no longer was like toying with the idea. Then I knew, and when I knew, I actually had to sit down. I was like, wait, whoa, this is actually real. So I guess what I'm asking is, did you never had that kind of moment because you kind of came from that? Like you adopted that understanding very early on?
I feel like I definitely had it since early on, but the further I got with exploring psychedelics, I don't know how else to say this, but the deeper I started feeling into source, into experiencing God, and that was to me the part that was undeniable. Yeah.
Okay, so it was more about the experience of the divine versus, saying anything about it, or like having it like hover in your head as some kind of a ontological like thorn of any kind.
No, yeah, it was more like just like the very like real, beyond real, like just hyper real like feeling of like God and source and dissolving into that it was the part that really convinced me was that it was a deep remembrance instead of like it didn't feel like a new experience.
Remember that we came from that to some degree.
Like well, it's more like every time I would dissolve into it, like that droplet into the ocean, it was like, oh yeah, I'm home. That's home. Like I remember this is where I was before I was here. And that was the part that really convinced me. Because if I was having those experiences and it was just as blissful, but it felt like, oh, this is new. Whoa. But instead it was like, oh, yeah. It was like that very deep feeling of like, I remember this. And yeah, that's the part that for me made it real. And
does it matter to you if, like, what is the actual nature of the thing? So, like, the thing we call divine, which I guess it always has this, like, very pure component, right? We think of the divine as like the ultimate good and the thing that is, the ultimate light, like God, like what most people think of when they think God, right? Would it change anything for you if we discovered that this is a super advanced civilization, or for you it doesn't matter? It's one and the same. It's the energy they're emanating that really matters.
Well, I would really question what's, the creating that, and
what created that?
Yeah, like if it's like advanced
civilization. So you think that God would be the thing that created the top of the pyramid?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just exploring.
Exactly,
I'm just fascinated by you.
Well, it's not even like the top of the pyramid or the creators, like what the pyramid is.
So the world itself.
Yeah, like that essence of like that like consciousness behind it all, that essence of love that unifies it, the glue of everything.
That's a beautiful. Yeah. That's actually a really good distinction, which is that there must be something that is as far, even if there's like the layer above us is like the super advanced civilization, or maybe there's not one above that and above that, whatever it is, there must be some. The buck has to stop somewhere, right? So it's almost like that's the craziest part, that there's got to be a portion that is as far to them as it is to us. It's like that's the thought that always blows my mind. It's like whatever we think, there's an actual fact of the matter, and that fact of the matter, just like you're like, wait, but there's an answer. There's like an answer. And what I really love, and I mean that because I don't always know how to do that easily, but I really appreciate when people can just use the feeling of having this sacred moment and make something out of it, either art or poem or whatever it is, and they can live in that moment and just let it be what it is without the explosiveness of the fact that that's the case. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
or even especially I feel like with that like realm, or that like tapping into that pure consciousness, God, source, whatever, like as soon as we start to feel like to throw logic and put the mind into it and trying to, it can't hold it. And that's what I found, is that it's so beyond our little, monkey minds, that it's more like something we have to dissolve into. Okay?
So Kanye and the Jews, right? No.
So I'd love to mention, just for the listeners that were curious, I remember the name of the book. It just slipped my mind at the moment, but it's The Mission of Art.
Mission of Art by Alex Gray. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll even put it in the, when you forgot it, I'll just put it in the thing. And put it in the thing again.
Sweet.
So Alex Gray would be like, when this podcast is going to get bigger, Alex Gray's going to see it. It's like, why is this guy hating on me? It's like, I'm not hating on you.
I learned a lot from him. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. So the point that I really wanted to maybe, I guess, slightly challenge or maybe push back just a little bit on the whole mind can't grasp it. Like, it seems to me that because the mind, or the logical mind, right?
Yeah, the logical mind.
It's part of it. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's funny. As I'm saying it, I'm looking at this picture, which is like half and half. Half and half, exactly. I don't know if the camera can see.
This is by my friend Ramin.
So, who?
Ramin.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll put links to all the stuff, and I'll put... So...
Do you want to read what it says? Because it's really cool.
Okay. Which one do I read first? The left one?
Yeah.
So the left one says, I want to be my full 8-dimensional self. And the right one says, but that self wanted to be human. So just bouncing back and forth. So you become 9-dimensional. It solves the problem. So I guess because so the reason I'm saying this. So, okay, what I'm saying is that I feel like that because the logical mind is also part of it, of whatever this great mind is, right? It must be part of, I don't want to use the word puzzle, but the puzzle. Like, it's part of whatever this is for, even if all of this is just to have a good giggle for the whatever, right? So it doesn't have to be this grandiose mission, but whatever it's set up to do or it is doing, I feel like it's a part of it. And the reason I'm saying that is because, yes, I'm predisposed in that way, so it's hard for me to see it in any other way, even though I manage to do it sometimes through, meditation and psychedelic states. But I would say that many moments, for example, a true moment of understanding feels very sacred to me. It's almost like when you truly understand something or someone, like really understand, like you have this like very clear view of what it is, there's almost like this most comfortable couch that you just relax into and you're just like, oh, this is amazing. Like it has this like very transcendent feeling. So in that regard, I feel like, yes, there's something, the logical mind can have its toxic parts, which is just like this like crazy circular thing of just like it must be this or it must be that, and you have to like trace everything in a particular way, right? But it also has that, which is that when you apply the right amount of it combined with the ability to also let go and let unfold, then it's almost like a purer picture that arises. So I'm going to give you just one more example, and then I'll let you respond. I would love to see what you think about that, because I feel like in more ways than not, you and I, we align pretty well. But so I was part of this event. It was like almost like just like a get together of a friend that was invited me, and it involved psychedelics and everything. And there was a guy there who he's really on this quest of like growth and trying to help other humans and all that stuff. And it seemed to me in that moment, and I'm very careful with how I'm phrasing this because I'm sure that I had a very limited picture of what was going on, but he seemed to be on, and the only reason I'm not mentioning his name is because I'm not sure he wants to be mentioned. Otherwise I totally would. But essentially it felt like he was on such a mission into this, what he saw as the divine and the profound. He put such a big emphasis on just like everything that can be expressed with words can be experienced in a much more beautiful way without any words. And it was almost like, to me, it almost seemed like it was obsessive in the other way. Mm-hmm. It's almost like, no, just like, just. And then we had this conversation. It was almost like a butting heads a little bit, but like we actually had like a really beautiful like moment in which we understood each other. And I told him like, look, I'm not a stranger to this. Like I do Vipassana, you know, I've been there. Like I understand, but there you go. She understands too. But there's this other component, which is that words are beautiful, and you can use language for very deep communication that I'm not so sure you can do with silence. There's a part to it that needs to be played, and I guess my question to you would be, because you have to quiet your mind to a certain extent. Zena, what's up today? When you have to quiet your mind, she definitely wants to talk. When you want to quiet in order to do your work, you have to quiet your mind to a certain extent. You have to allow for the thing to present itself, right? So you become exceedingly good, I'm sure, at doing that, right? But also you have this component on which we agree, which is like, yeah, there's also like, I'm adding the poems, I'm adding the thing. Do you feel that art... First of all, let me ask you this. This would be an interesting question. Do you feel that actually everything that can be expressed with words can also be expressed in complete silence? Do you think that's true? Or you think certain things...
So I feel like there is a point where we can go with the logical mind, and it can, like the path of knowledge, which is, a traditional path of, studying the ancient texts and the path of knowledge.
Just so I understand, do you mean more academic?
Yeah,
or? Okay.
Yeah, or there's specifically one of the paths of like yoga that is very much on knowledge and studying ancient texts. So it is like an important branch, but it's almost like the raft that's taking us there. But there is a moment where we get there that we must just be it.
You got to shed the language.
Yes.
Because you have to be the thing itself.
Yes, but it's also really, I feel like, valuable to be able to come back and put it as close as we can into words to share with others. So there's definitely a very important value in, like, instead of being like, oh, let's just be silent like your friend and not express any of it, because then, there's also a hindrance in that. Or there's also a hindrance of too many words and never leaving the raft to actually enjoy the island,
So the balance of that.
Yes, of being able to go there and then, bring back words and bring back poems and artworks and share that, and remember that and help others remember that space or get to that, place we're trying to go. So there is definitely like a balance of enjoying both, of both being valuable.
So I guess bringing back to your bottle, which is that I guess we are the symbolic. So like language is symbols that express pure meaning. And, if we look closer, it's clear that language, it's almost like a behavior that is... the animation behind it is some kind of almost like a piano thing, like inside. It's almost like something emotionally moves you a certain way and you want to express a certain thing. And then it makes you pick up a brush, or it makes you say words, or it makes you... The impulse to express comes from this like meaning tapestry that is kind of playing inside, and that meaning tapestry is, I feel, the 8-dimensional creature trying to manifest itself in like the symbolic, right? And I guess when if you want to take it one step further, I guess the Buddhists would say, but even that is still some kind of a form. Like we're actually aiming towards this like complete dissolution into just the thing that is beyond the things, the thing that contains everything and nothing, and all that jazz. And to me, it's always hard to go there. We just had this little exchange off camera, which is I don't know why, but I'm just it almost saddens me that we don't get to aim towards maybe evolving into this space in the highest glory and beauty that we possibly can, versus just aiming out of it. And I have to be honest, and I'm rambling a little bit, but it's a real conundrum in my brain. And so I'm just going to throw it into your court and see what you think.
Yeah.
Which is that I never know. I would love to know whether the Buddha actually saw the thing beyond the things, and he actually nailed it on the head forever and ever, which is that no matter... You might think right now that, you know, those things are unfolding in a way that you want to keep expressing, but in the end you will learn that you actually want to, what he called, get out of the house. You want to get out of this condition, basically. Or it's the case that because he was still bound by the time in which he lived, there's certain bits of information and things he just didn't have access to. Like, it was still limited to his time. And because of that, you know, he expressed the most profound and true thing for his time. But yet we can go further. Not in the sense of, you know, this is not like a trying to one-up the Buddha. Just in the sense that we collectively can understand things that would incorporate his very deep insight into insights we've had technologically. And then can we create technologies that incorporate the sacred? Like, can we create technologies that hold artistic elements that also express themselves in real time? Like, imagine an engine that at the same time also creates some kind of a, you know, like an energy field that makes people feel a certain way, or, you know, actually getting them into a state of understanding that makes them create art on a whole new level that then enlighten more people just by looking at it. The number of possibilities is so infinite. I guess I'm just saying that to me, it always, like I said, it almost saddens me to think that I almost feel I'm looking at the people that, you know, the monks and people like that, and I always feel less than them. Because I feel like the fact that I want to aim into this world in this particular way, something in me, almost like I don't know if it's a higher self or maybe it's just actually the little me, the egoic me that compares, but I almost feel like they're wholesome and I'm not. You know what I mean? Like, it almost feels dirty to me that I want this world to be better versus aiming outside of this world. Do you understand my sentiment? Or?
Yeah. Well, I feel deeply that there's nowhere to go. Like, if anything, going deeper into here, and that space that a lot of people are pointing to, that mountaintop, that like place of pure consciousness, isn't somewhere else but deeper, another deeper layer of this. And it's so important to have that dimension of connection to that space, because it'll make our time here so much more pleasant because we're not attached. And if you're having a great time here and you feel at peace and happy, I think this is why the physical realm was created, to enjoy, to love, to explore, to create. And I think the only time that we have to stop and really think, all right, how are we going to, you know, tap into that realm of pure consciousness, is when we start suffering. If we're suffering really deeply, and that's the thing, in this existence there is elements of course that are going to bring up suffering, such as sickness, old age, loss of loved ones, death, and those happen to all of us. So it's important to have that deep root in that space of pure consciousness, of God, that connectivity, so that when things start, you know, people start dying, we start growing old, we can not even return, because we're not going anywhere, but feel into that peace within ourselves, retreat into that within us, so that we don't get sad, we don't suffer very deeply in this realm. So it's almost like keeping one foot there, one foot here, and enjoying this here. But if once, you know, we start suffering, we can deeper feel into that formless realm, that true, you know, home. But it's here. It's nowhere else. We're not trying to go over there. We're trying to go like...
No, but some people are. And I guess the fear is always the ultimate I told you so. You know what I mean? It's almost like if I put all my cards here, it's almost like I have this image of like the people who did aim to transcend, and they like transcend in front of you, and they're like, "See, we told you so." While your world is kind of burning or something, you know, it's like this, like, shit, I bet on the wrong horse.
Yeah,
like,
but at the same time, it's not like they're not transcending, going bloop like into.
Yeah, no, I know.
It's more like they're like retreating into this deep peace. So it's like cultivating that, that just can be almost like very pleasant for this realm also. So if anything happens here, or more like when it happens, when it gets unpleasant, we have that.
Yeah, I guess my biggest fear is always the self-delusion, which is always present. It's like you know what I mean? Like it's always like you trying so hard not to delude yourself, and then life will always show you like, nope, that was another layer of the onion. And in that regard, I have to say that like Vipassana is the only place where when I sit, all those onion layers are peeled, and only when you truly stop trying to or allow yourself to get excited by each one of those peels is when the real breakthrough happens. Oh, that's how it was for me, at least. So in the beginning, you have all those layers. I was like, oh, that was that. Oh, right, and that was that, and that was that, and that was that. And eventually, you're like, okay, stop. Like, stop. Like, yes, it's amazing, but stop being amazed by it and just understand that it will always keep peeling like that. And that being okay with just it always keep peeling like that, to me, that was like or at least in the moment, that was my biggest breakthrough in understanding. And yeah, I guess it's just like, see, my thoughts, like the circular thing. It's like, it just keeps, which is where it's really nice to be able to just like, okay, let's just sit.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, just feeling into the fact that it's all perfect. It's, you know, and a lot of people might feel funny about that, but even the difficult
about it being perfect.
Yeah, because when we're in this space right here and we have all these thoughts and things happening, it can sometimes not seem perfect, but if we really zoom out, we're just this like tiny little blue dot, you know, in the space, and it's like, it's all fine, you know. Like,
it's all fine, yeah.
It's all fine. And if we feel, especially if we develop that relationship with that realm of pure consciousness, that space, that peace within us, then we can like really feel that it's really like all fine, you know, and not be as attached or as moved by the little ripples on the surface of this physical dimension, because we feel into that deep ocean of our own peace, of our own like self that really transcends everything that's going on here.
What was, and it might be every piece for you, I don't know, but was there a particular piece of yours that when you drew it, you looked at it and you were just like in true awe? Or is it most pieces like that? It's a little bit of like a, you know, like a very real question that kind of cuts to the core of ego, but no, I don't mean egoically. Just like you looked at it objectively and you're like, okay, that's...
So definitely, I feel like it's so common for artists to be in the whole like mindset of like, oh, I hate my art, it's no good. And that's like, I've definitely been there. But at this point, like I do these pieces with so much love, and I don't feel like they're my pieces. It's more like visions that are coming through me. And I feel so honored to be able to have them come through me, that some of my most recent pieces, especially the really large ones like Shiva, that's 6 feet, or Kali, 5.5 feet, or the Game of Existence, also 5.5 feet. I'm not gonna lie, I've never told this to anybody, but I do bow like when I complete them, and I'm just like so grateful for them. I'll just like, you know, and like, yeah, it just feels so beautiful. Like I'm so grateful to have been.
That's actually not weird, because you see that as a divine transmission. So you're saying thank you for the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't see anything weird with that.
Yeah, and I like chant to them, and to me it's like, you know, it's my method of worship is to create these visions. And I think if I attach, you know, ego is good at times, you know, it's there for a purpose, but if I attach like really heavy like ownership and attachment to them, and this is, I feel so proud because this is my piece, then it starts kind of getting diluted. But if I stay in that mindset of it's more of like a vision that came through me, and I feel so honored to be able to help create it and bring it through and to share it with others, then really it's like I just have like so much devotion and gratitude, and I do feel really impressed by, you know, the what came through. So,
and also all the years that you took to actually hone the tool.
Yes,
and
yes.
being able to actually be the vessel through which this can happen.
Yes,
it
which
doesn't happen
took
overnight.
a lot of hard work and a lot of years and a lot of sleepless nights and
Yep.
all that. So
Yeah.
so I feel really happy with them.
We have a good friend, Daniel, who said that he's a musician. He said he told Kelsey one time about her pieces. He said that the way he found to deal with in the beginning, he also had, you know, the whole imposter syndrome, but then he realized that if he went through enough with a certain piece, he feels justified. Like it's almost like the amount of suffering you went with it through, or like the amount of work you had to put in. There's like a certain line where, okay, I'm allowed to be the thing that made this.
Yeah.
So, what other meditation techniques do you use?
I like to play around with quite a few. I really enjoy recently just chanting Om Namah Shivaya.
What is that? Is that like from a tradition? You have to educate me a little bit.
Yes, this is from Hinduism and yoga. And I'm not sure if you've heard about Shiva. He's, like one of the deities. So I recently created, I spent the past year and a half working on my Shiva artwork, which was a 6-foot tall piece, basically life size, of him sitting, meditating. And through the whole process of me creating this artwork, I chanted a lot of Shiva chants. So most of the artwork was like a very long meditation of me actually chanting while painting. And it kind of stuck with me like through my meditations. That like same vibration, I tune into it, because I started kind of like trying to bring it to the canvas. So what I would do, this just kind of happened naturally, where there's it's very common to meditate with chants or like mantras. So I would sit and it kind of come up, and that feeling of love for Shiva, it's just one of the archetypes for representing source, would start to come up, and I would just it just felt the most natural. I'd kind of relax into it and just do basically like anapana, like breath meditation, but just to the chant Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, and that kind of and through that I'd get into like a very deep trance and relaxation, and the thinking mind would quiet down, and eventually it'd get me really deep and relaxed and calm, and then I'd just let go of it and just be in silence. And I'd go back, and when I was painting, I'd kind of do the same thing, but of course I was more alert and actually painting, but it kind of started to create this like relationship between the piece and my meditations. So I'm still kind of heavily influenced by that because of that piece and doing it for so long, like a year and a half.
It took you a year and a half to complete it?
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yes. So when I meditate, I'm like now in that habit of I sit down and I'm like, Om Namah Shivaya. But now I'm like moving on to, new pieces. So I've started to just focus on Anapana again. I've practiced Vipassana and a lot of different types. But yeah, I'm just starting to focus back on Anapana and really focusing on what my next few pieces are and how my meditation can relate to that. But I really, at the end of the day, these are all just tools, and, there's many ways to quiet the mind and lead to that place of stillness and peace.
Yeah, I was just wondering what your daily practice is, because I know you meditate a lot. How long did it take you to do Kali, by the way?
Kali took me a year. Yeah, and I'm about.
Oh, that's crazy!
Yeah,
I didn't realize that some pieces take that long.
Yeah, I'm about to release her on Friday, so.
Congratulations!
Yeah,
I'm excited. What's the longest piece? Would that be Shiva?
No, the longest piece is a piece I'm still working on, which is called The Game of Existence, and I've been working on it since 2019.
Oh, is that my favorite one? The one with the you said you're gonna do a game out of it?
Yes, so
That's my favorite piece.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Maybe because there's a lot of purple.
Yeah, it's almost almost 5 years, like 4.5.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's been
Why does it take so long? Like, what is the
because
thing about it? Like,
well,
because there's like sections you don't know what you're gonna do with them
no,
yet, or
it's just very highly detailed,
mm.
and that takes time. And I created this was largely inspired by one of my first Changa journeys, where I'd love to share the story of it. So
Please.
basically, I did Changa, and I started to see myself jump through perspectives of all humans. So it kind of imagine you like going like bloop, bloop. You're like seeing through someone else's eyes.
Tell Kelsey about it.
Yeah, so you like jump perspectives. And it started to go faster, and then it starts jumping through like all like animals, and then faster, and it just started jumping through all sorts of things that I don't even know. And it started going like light speed. And when a fan is like spinning really fast, it looks solid.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of started having that effect where it started flipping through perspectives of everything.
You just became the perspective.
That it became the perspective of this infinite self. And it was very strong, like it's like the part of everything that's infinite, that transcends birth and death, that just is consistent. So basically God, source. But I started to kind of see it like through, like it like was flipping through all the perspectives, but I started to kind of see the underlying like consciousness behind all of it. And it was playing this game of existence, of life. And I came out at night out of that journey and created a piece that became very popular, which is The Infinite Self Plays the Game. And it was a very like quick version of expressing that idea, where it's the infinite self and there's a board game. But after that, I felt like it didn't do it justice. A lot of people really loved it, but I did it fairly quickly, and it wasn't highly detailed. And that experience was so profound to me and resonated with me so deeply that I really wanted to create something that further honored it. And through that, I was like, I really need to put like my absolute best towards this idea. Like no shortcuts, like as much detail, as much intricacy, as much love into this piece to fully encompassing that like infinite self. And so now I've been working this past like all these years, creating a 5.5-foot version of this, which is way more detailed, where I just gave it my all, where like everything has things like it's just.
So did you copy some portions of it and then add it?
No, the whole concept is the same, because there's like this being kind of playing, like kind of orchestrating the whole thing, and this like table with a board game.
But you started it from scratch, like on a new canvas.
Yes.
Wasn't, okay.
Yes.
You didn't expand the.
No. So it's like the whole. It's like they look similar, but it's all remade. Like the being has much better shading and is like still kind of like same like format, but it's all remade. And
how do you let go of a piece like that? How do you sell something like that after putting so much? It almost feels like
well, I haven't released it yet, and of course like my goal with these pieces is for them to be pieces for people to meditate on, to remember the divine, to sit in front of, and ideally have group meditations, or so ultimately what I would love to do someday is have a space where they can be in public display, where people can come meditate on them anytime.
Museum or
like some sort of like museum, or have them being some sort of temple, something like that, so that it can just be in public display for people to permanently come and enjoy them.
That would be ideal.
Yeah, because it would kind of
some millionaire will buy it and put it in some storage. That wouldn't be ideal. How do you? I don't know if you ever encountered that problem, but did you ever have a situation in which there was someone that you didn't want to sell it to? Or usually people that approach you, they're already kind of like...
Well, the thing is, it's definitely different with these new larger pieces I've been doing, which I just released. Like there's 3 big ones that I've made recently. And well, I've been working on them for years, but I just released the first one, which was Shiva, like last month. And I'm about to release the other 2 like soon. And so now I'm starting to kind of like meditate on what would that relationship that I want with that particular collector be like. And what I would really love if someone is interested in that, I will express that the ultimate goal is for them to be in public display, and if they have a way of doing that, you know, even if it doesn't involve me, but if they can put it in public display.
You can put it on the contract.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still like kind of thinking about it, how I'm gonna go through with that. But I, you know, if someone's putting enough effort into getting a piece this large, and you know, I'd have a conversation with them of like, hey, like ultimately it's not about one person, it's about it affecting the whole collective consciousness, and how can we together create that to have that impact.
Have you ever played with like the more dynamic media, like you know, like 3D modeling, things like that, or?
Yeah, I have.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I have a little bit. So I've dabbled a little bit in it. I definitely enjoy more 2D art, and I've been very.
Sorry, 2D, you said?
Yeah, 2D.
Okay.
And I've been blessed to have worked on certain projects where I had a team that worked with me, that there was people that did 3D. So there's some pieces like I just helped create an NFT project that had, you know, 3D models in it, but it was someone that was bringing those ideas to life that, you know, I received to 3D model. So, but I don't personally work with 3D models much myself.
Do you feel like it's just like it doesn't really speak to you that much?
I think it's beautiful. I really enjoy the whole process that I have right now of working with my acrylic and like blending it. Like I love painting, and then I love like painting digitally where it's still 2D, and it's very similar. It's just like blending and then working back and forth between those two and the layers. So it's mostly just that I really enjoy those processes. Like that's what I'm having a good time. I'm just like chanting and just going, like blending either with the digital brush or the paintbrush, and I just have so much fun doing that I don't see like a point of me. I tried like a little bit, but it just wasn't as fun for me to like kind of like be clicking around and sculpting and stuff. I've never been into sculpting like that much.
So there's something about the element itself that you enjoy way more.
Yes, yeah. And it's just I find it so fascinating, two-dimensional art, because it's like it's the whole skill of taking what we see or what we want to create and just like creating that illusion of three-dimensionality
of
through
depth,
of depth of 3D form through 2D. And I just think like for me that's so fascinating. So
I wonder if that's how they think about it in 4 and 6 and 8 dimensions. It's like embedded into 3D. Yeah, how do we create the shades? Do you have like a biggest influence? Like an artist that you really, really look up to, or somebody that really stands out to you at the moment, or anything like that?
Not currently, to be honest. Like I've definitely had some big influences in the past, but right now I'm been focusing on having my biggest influence be my own spiritual experiences. So, you know, when I was younger, for example, like Alex Gray was one of those. But as I've, you know, developed my own practice and my own style of art, I've really tried to get my inspiration from my own spiritual experiences. And I really enjoy a lot of other artists' art, but I think I'm trying to make it more of like when I go deep into these mystical experiences, like what's actually there, and then bringing that back instead of like looking outwards and be like, oh, that's cool, I should create that with my art. You know, it's like,
so they're your inspiration. The space is your inspiration.
Yes.
Yeah. There's one beautiful Terence McKenna line where it says, when that much art, what was the phrase? I think it goes, with that much, I'm paraphrasing, but with that much beauty pouring in, I forget what how he said it, but basically the gist of it was, with that much beauty coming from these spaces, truth can't be too far away. And I always remember that, because I feel like there's a component of beauty that almost seems to be completely universal. Like, yes, you can find beauty in like different things, but there's a certain kind of beauty that it's almost like you know, like you go into the DMT space and there's like you described, there's a lot of this like very light pulsing things that are iridescent and they're flowing into each other, but at the same time they're mechanical. But there's an element to them. It's almost like they glow with beauty. It's like this like very transcendent like thing that arises from them, and I think that it actually kind of blows my mind that some people will go their whole lives without ever seeing that. It's almost like it's unfathomable to me. It's like I almost. Maybe saying sad is a little trite, but it's just like I wish I could just like convince them or bring them closer to like being comfortable and experiencing.
But there's some people that honestly shouldn't do it. Like
that's true.
You know, I'm all for psychedelics, but to be honest, I know there's some people that should not do psychedelics.
Oh, 100%. No, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that, but because I think that the spaces that they would tend to drift to will also be slightly different.
Yes.
So like the same as you have the divine, you have the most horrific, and those two sometimes come into wine, and it's not always even clear what's what. And I think that being able to absorb the unknown and the bizarre is a skill.
Yes.
I think that not everybody can absorb that. I think some people are so locked into what they think is possible and what they think, you know, is the world, that you're absolutely right. The shock that they will experience is a little bit like it might shock their system beyond recognition.
Yeah, exactly. Do more harm than good.
Yeah. Did you ever see that happen?
Not personally. Not personally, like, but I've heard of people.
Yeah. No, I don't know if for the worst, but I had a friend who, which is weird because we've done a lot of psychedelics, but he did. It was actually weed that got him there. It's very strange. And
we'd get some people sometimes.
Yeah. But it wasn't like you know, weed has this like paranoia tendency. But he came back from Israel from visiting his parents, and he did just smoked some weed there, and then he came back. And I remember his face was different, and I could see it right away, and I was like, interesting. And then a week later, he started talking in like absolutes, and things were very black and white. And then the black yarmulke came on, and then, you know, the things, and then he became completely orthodox within like a week. And it didn't feel healthy at all. Like it didn't feel like there was like a understanding and a progression. No, it was just like almost this like, it's almost like he was falling into a hole. That's what it felt like, into a hole. That's what it felt like. And so I've definitely seen things like that. It's just that I think, and I guess this is my personal view of it, but I think the only way out of something like this is actually to go in again and then kind of excavate undo the whatever went a little sideways. But, you know, it's important to mention these things because they might not, you know, not everything is that giddy, but at the same time, I feel like there's a strength and there's a different appreciation for me personally for the fact that I'm aware of kind of both worlds. So it's almost like a different appreciation for it, and the fact that knowing how to steer through that space is a very important component in both exploring it, but I also think in exploring the real world, because the real world also has those two components.
Yes. Because
you said that you tend not to involve ever like negative emotions, but I feel like, and I'm totally like stabbing in the dark, it might not be the case, but it feels to me like they must be incorporated somehow. It's just that you might not think of it that way. Like if I would have to guess, what is happening is that if whatever negative emotions you might experience, you said when you deal with them, unless you suppress them, you incorporate them somehow. You basically make sense of them in a way that is productive, and then they must be infused in some form in the rest of it.
Yeah, sometimes I want to express them. Like, my goal is to always express them in a positive manner. So there's been some pieces, like if people have seen Phoenix of Higher Consciousness, that piece is one that I incorporated that very deeply. And it's a piece that I created when COVID had just hit, and then the Black Lives Matter movement started, and it just seemed like here in the U.S. everything was just in flames. Like, there's all this like killing and hatred and riots, and I just felt so like deeply like saddened by like what the world was coming to. I was like, and what I did was I was chanting because I was like feeling all this energy of this heavy energy that the United States was going through, and I got this vision of all like almost like the old world in flames, and it was like buildings and like masks on the ground and riots and all this like terrible dark stuff rising into a fire and turning into this phoenix that of light, and everybody with these wings like forming into a heart, and everybody kind of meditating,
now I know which piece.
Meditating on the wings, and it was like all about like leaving that old world and rising into this phoenix of a higher consciousness. So that was a piece where I expressed all those like negative feelings, but in a positive manner of like, hey, we're gonna like rise and create a better world from this old world that we're leaving behind.
I feel like we might actually get into that very soon, or it's already kind of like happening.
Yes.
Like the phoenix is slowly like rising and
yes,
spring.
and
it's getting more madness and more.
And it's
madness.
about helping create that phoenix of a better world where everybody is treated well and we're healthy and we're like in the love vibration, all those positive things.
Wow. Yeah, I actually really love this piece. I know exactly which one you're talking about, and I only noticed the meditating people later. I didn't notice them before, and that really completed the piece for me. When I started zooming in, it was like, oh wow, that's very nice detail. I love this piece. So how do you view the trajectory of your career? Do you have any ideas about it, or you just let it unfold like fully organically? Like, do you have like a vision? Like, if I ask you what's next in the next 5 years, do you have like a vision, or is just whatever you feel like evolving into?
Well, I do have an ultimate goal, which I try to make it specific just for the sake of goals. So my goal is to raise the consciousness of 3 billion people. And
it's a very specific number.
Yes. And the reason I chose that number is because, well, it's constantly changing now. This was a few years ago that I set this goal, so now it's probably a lot more. But that's a little less than everybody on the internet. So a little bit less than everybody on the internet.
Is that a fact? How many people on the internet?
There's more now. So I set this goal many years ago.
Really?
And it was a little over that.
I was not aware of this. I was convinced that there's no more than like maybe 1 billion people on the internet. So you're saying there's like over 3 billion?
Yeah, there's at least 3 billion.
Wow.
There's probably more now. Last time I checked, this was just from me like a few years ago doing a quick Google search of like how many people are on the internet. I was like, oh, okay.
Like that's almost half of the earth. That's kind of crazy. I didn't realize this.
Yeah. Probably should double check, but that's just what I based it on. Either I was like, let me shoot for a little more for like by the time I'm like old. There'll be probably around that many, or there's a little more than what there is, something around that. But I basically wanted to be like a good chunk of whatever is going to be on the internet by the time I'm 80 or like 90 or something like that.
Throw a number.
Yeah, an old number.
No, throw a number.
Yeah.
You're probably going to be like in your 20s, in your 90s. That's probably what's going to happen.
Yeah. So kind of I basically want to create some sort of image that goes around and just is seen by everybody and plants a seed of raising their consciousness. So there's this beautiful like saying in Buddhism or like story or that there's certain artworks they specifically I know talk about this about the Tibetan Wheel of Life that they can plant the seed of enlightenment, and even though the person might not become enlightened right away, that many years or lifetimes later eventually will bloom into it. And I thought when I created this goal that was very fascinating. And I was like, well, if I could do that with, something similar to a good chunk of the internet, that'd be really cool. And I'm not saying I've created that piece yet, and that's a really out there goal, but to strive for that. So we'll actually, hit that many people, connect, an image to that many people. Who knows? But
the image, just to be specific, I don't mean to cut you off, but I want to understand. The image would have to invoke what specifically in all these people?
I would love for it to invoke God. so deeply, a remembrance of the divine, of the infinite part of ourselves, of that like love vibration so deeply that, you know, it help remind them of that and to create a positive change in their life, to, you know, a connection to divinity, to them want to go out and do positive stuff, to treat people with, you know, kindness, something like that. And for some people, it just plant the seed of like, oh, what's that? But, you know, I want to create this image. Like, for me, like, my goal is to try to paint that. And I don't want to do it in the classic way of it being like some man with a beard, you know, in the sky, which, you know, is a beautiful representation. And that's why I think Michelangelo and is so famous, is because he attempted to, and he created these beautiful artworks of that, and it was an attempt to paint God. But
also according to the times.
Yes, according to the times. But now, that's why I'm largely doing my Hindu deity series, is because I want to dedicate enough time to create an artwork of, you know, the current major world religion that's the most ancient, Hinduism, and see how for like so many thousands of years it's been created and depicted of God, that after I'm done with that series, I'll have some like almost like knowledge on how it's been done for a while, and then I can go through and create my own version of something that just deeply reminds people of that. Now, what could that be? Like, what can you put on a canvas that makes people go like, whoa, God, without actually being a guy in a white beard or even one of anything that's been expressed before, is a really like, you know, wild concept, but I'm gonna try.
That is a wild goal. That is, now that I understand exactly what I mean, that is actually kind of crazy. Because essentially you're trying to recreate an actual psychedelic experience through an image.
It's like
painting
a transcendent. It's trying to paint the impossible, you know, honestly, because like that's like, if anything, like the thing that transcends the most, that is like so beyond form, or I mean it is form, but it's also beyond form. And like I'm just curious, like how close can a human come to putting that on a canvas and sharing that image, where that you don't have to tell people like, oh look, I try to paint God, like that they just see it and they feel it. Like how close can I try to do that? Now again, an impossible goal, but I'll spend a whole life trying to do it, and
that's a noble goal. I love the
see what happens, you know.
I personally love the specificity of it. It's like my favorite. It's like, you know, dream the impossible. This is the ultimate dream the impossible.
Dream the impossible and try. And hey, if you know, if I don't succeed, like I think I'll at least make it possible for some people. Like some people might recognize it, and as long as I give it my best effort, I'll be pretty happy and die happy and feel like I did my part to, you know, or at least, you know, also teach visionary art, and I try to encourage my students also to do this. So maybe if I don't do it, you know, I'll teach some people, plant the seed for someone, maybe one of my students, or if I write a book or something for someone later on to be able to do that achievement. Now there's no like, I feel like set like mark of like, okay, we did it, we painted God, because there's no actual way of painting that, but how close can we get? You know?
I'm just blown away by the mission, by the idea. Now I'm fascinated by it, because now my brain is like, ooh, let me think of all the possibilities. It's got to be like amount of shading, and there's got to be a certain shape and expression.
And if anything, I want to encourage people, like, it's not about me doing it, but like how close can humans get to doing that, to remind people of that. So if you're listening to this and you're an artist, like, or a musician or a poet or whatever form of art you do, like, try to think of that concept, like how close can you get to actually like representing God and having people recognize it without you saying that it is that. Like
what if we succeed and then you hear all of a sudden like giant claps from the sky? That would be amazing.
So creating a full psychedelic experience, like just through an image would, That
That is a noble goal. That's amazing.
And then not only that, but then trying to like spread it to 3 million people, 3 billion people.
Now, but then it's probably going to be like 10 billion. It's going to be like nothing. We're already going to be across colonies on Mars and on different planets.
Because, I mean, if 3 billion see it, then by then, it like, if they're being kind, like, it just changes the whole world. You know, it doesn't have to, like, not everybody has to see it, but if, like, a substantial percentage of the human population has their consciousness raised, then they're just going to be so much kinder and better and, like, help people and, like, spread love, and that's going to affect the whole world, you know? Then the other people would just be like, well, everybody's so nice, I'm going to be nice too, you know?
You fascinated me with this because there's certain elements. Did I tell you this thing that I had on DMT when this object appeared and I was just, like, going, like, crazy in the living? Did I ever tell you this?
Which object?
So there was one time in which I was sitting right here and then I smoked some DMT and then there was this orb that appeared in front of me, and
oh, yes.
I told you this, right? And it was just, and then like triangles that appeared around the orb. But again, there's a lot of objects in the DMT space, but this particular one, see, I don't know what it was about it. Like you're saying, it's like, what is it about it? There was something about it. In that moment, I just believed in heaven. It was just divine. There was something about the motion of like the way the triangles were doing this dance around it, and it was kind of rotating, and I get the music that I could hear that was accompanying it, which was like this, like, you know, like what you would imagine heaven sounding like oh, like whatever. But there was something about the way it was expressing itself that was divine, and that I feel like I never thought about that, but yeah. I think it's possible that we also create an object that is like that or does
comes
something
close. Yeah. Yes, and for example, if there was an object that did that, an image, and when people saw it, they felt really connected to the divine, and they could put that image like on their altar and every day come to it and enjoy it and meditate and go deep and find that within themselves, because it's just a mirror. It's just trying to be a mirror to draw you back in. It's not about worshiping an object. It's about like remembering and going back in and feeling that within ourselves. And if they could just have that in their daily life, like how would that change their whole life? You know, it changed everything.
Completely. It changes everything. Yeah, it absolutely. When I saw even other experiences on DMT way before then, I remember having the distinct thought, nothing will ever be the same again. It's just the fact that I was seeing it, just me. The fact that one person saw it, which I'm sure others as well. But it didn't even matter. The fact that one person saw this, I knew nothing will ever be the same again. So I think that nothing will ever be the same again kind of component, I think that's the thing that kind of separates it from like regular art pieces, I guess. Mm-hmm. Maybe it will become like a whole new type of art, which is like transcendent divine art. Yes. And it would just be like this thing where we understand all of a sudden this like ultimate transcendent component, and then we create things in that image, like technologies and things that, you know, yes. because it has this element. Basically. And
I'm open, like I'm not completely set on how that image or that artwork or whatever that object becomes is going to be, because I know the technology is going to be evolving, and I just trust and I open myself as a vessel for that to come through me, because that's what I want, you know, to express and share with the world, to help. And I just trust that if it's like my idea is that I'll just keep trying to do it, and every time I'll just get a little closer, get a little better, and then eventually, hopefully, like in whatever medium or mixture image will come through, that'll try to do that as good as it can be done for now. And then maybe more people after that, like later decades, will like create something even better and better and better.
Man, I love your mind. This is like I love big dreamers, and this is like you know, it's kind of like my mission is kind of like it's not the same, but it's kind of similar along the lines of like, I want to move the dial at least a little bit before I leave in the direction that will help us become more, or imagine more, or do more, or like really like on a whole other level. So I'm so with you on that, and I love that.
Yeah, and like summary, just like, you know, come as close to painting God and raise the consciousness of 3 billion people with it.
No biggie. Just
like,
whatever.
That's my insane goal.
What age would you have your kids wait before you allow them to use any psychedelics?
I think it really depends on their, individual soul.
So like how mature they are, and you just have to see.
Yes. I don't think it's like a specific like number, like at this particular age number you're considered responsible and spiritual enough or whatever to explore your consciousness. It's more of like the age of the soul and like how they're acting and things like that. And I think I'll know the moment, and and I'm also open to the possibility that they might never, if that's not what they're supposed to do, like in their journey. Like if they're just like, they're not about it and they don't want to, and they're like into something else, like I'm not gonna force it on them, so I'm just more like gonna flow with it and see what feels right.
Well, listen, I love your flow and I love your mission.
Thanks.
And needless to say that I really, really love your art.
Thank you.
This was such a pleasure to have you on, and I would love to do this again when we come back and visit.
Yeah.
Please, I know you will. Please keep creating what you're doing. It's a real blessing to have someone like you in the world.
Thank you.
And yeah, I mean, I'm many times I would like look at something you posted, and I would literally look at it for like 5 minutes and just like explore it, which like I never, like, I mean, who does that, right? On Instagram, like who explores the thing.
Thank you.
So yeah, I'm deeply honored that you took the time to talk to me. And here's for many, many more of these amazing conversations. So please come back and we'll do this again.
For sure.
Thank you,
so
Juliana.
much for having me, and just want to end on the note that may all beings be happy and well.
Thank you. Oh, one final thing, even though we definitely should have ended with that. Where can people find you?
You can find me at julianagarcesart.com. My Instagram is julianagarcesart. If you look it up on Facebook, also YouTube, it's all Juliana Garces Art.
And I'll leave all the links in the description. So back to all peace and love to all creatures. Thank you.
Blessings.